Hello and welcome. My name is Marc Blatstein, the physician founder of Physician Pre-Sentence Report Service. We're physician prison consultants. My phone number is here, 240-888-7778. That's my own personal cell. I pick up and return all of my own calls. There's no robot, no AI, and all the calls come to me. Today I'm going to do a video regarding it's a weekly article that I put out, federal courts and BOP or Bureau of Prison News you can use, and I update it weekly. And so today's we'll start by saying the devil is in preparation for your pre-sentence interview. Are you going to be eligible for home confinement early release? Today is February 22, 2026. Prison Policy Initiative put out an article on February 18 regarding systemic racism in policing and prosecution. None of this is unknown to everyone. The criminal legal system is deeply rooted in structural racism, while many acknowledge just few grasp its extent. This month, we're going to focus the Prison Policy Initiative on research highlighting these biases in policing and prosecution, illustrating how the system disproportionately targets and punishes Black and Latinx individuals. Now, I will say that policing many interactions in the criminal justice system begin with arrests. This was addressed several years prior to the article. This was done several years prior, and from in a courtroom, and it was regarding the qualified immunity, which shields law enforcement from being charged in a crime. And so, very briefly, I'm going to go through this and the outcome of this particular case. Clarence Jamison was the individual. He wasn't jaywalking. He wasn't playing with a toy gun. He doesn't look suspicious. He wasn't selling loose or untaxed cigarettes. There were no $20 bills that were counterfeit. He wasn't even suspected of committing a crime. He wasn't mentally ill. He didn't need help. He wasn't assisting an autistic patient who had wandered from a group home. He wasn't walking home after an after-school job, wasn't walking back from a restaurant, wasn't hanging around on a college campus, wasn't even standing outside of his home or apartment. He wasn't inside the apartment eating ice cream. He wasn't sleeping in his bed. He wasn't even sleeping in his car. There was no improper lane change. There was no broken taillight, and he wasn't driving over or under the speed limit. No, Clarence Jamison was a Black man driving his Mercedes convertible home that he had just purchased, and he had his bill of sale. And so I include this under the Prison Policy Initiative's article because this happened in 2020, and the officer, the defendant, was this Nick McClendon, and it was an order granting qualified immunity. Now, the judge really had to provide, grant qualified immunity, but he made the extra step on recommending this for trial because these were all of the things that he was suspected of doing that I just read to you, except that he didn't do any of them. They suspected of him. You can go through and read the article or read the case, but he was suspected of having drugs in his car. His license plate, which was new, they said was turned in on itself, but upon inspection, that the bolts that held it together were there. No, he was just really picked on or profiled for being an African American male driving a nice, beautiful, brand new Mercedes Benz convertible. So this stuff happens, and this article was long before. This was in 2020. Data from 2022, which is where they go. Black drivers are searched or arrested during during traffic stops more than double the rate of other racial groups. And so this is just a case that substantiates that, and it's worthwhile looking through. Prosecutions also, they review Philadelphia Black and Latinx individuals face higher charges in sentencing than white individuals, and it can go on and on. Leah Wang, senior researcher. I include this in the article, rather on the article that I published, so that I don't have to, take your time and read it word for word. You can actually go to it and print it. Lisa Legal Foundation is a nonprofit, and they came out with some interesting news also. It was shocking that the GAO, Government Accountability Office, regarding the Bureau of Prisons, has messed up first step back placement. Who would have guessed? This is the title of this particular piece. February 17, GOP paints a picture rather of deadbeat Bureau of Prisons chaotic halfway house management. Now, I have the article below, so I'm not going to go to link it here, but these links are easily available. Mismanagement. Walter Pavo wrote in Forbes that lawmakers understood what correctional professionals have long known, that the last months of a sentence should be focused on reconnecting individuals to jobs, housing, and their families, not keeping them in prison longer than they have to. In reality, the GAO report that, among other things, the Bureau of Prisons didn't even know how many individuals were eligible and entitled to placement into a halfway house early. So I go into more here. Then they have late payments. It's not surprising that halfway houses are losing interest on taking in new persons from the Federal Bureau of Prisons because they're not getting paid. The home eligibility, confinement eligibility date, that's a very big, it's that was covered here too. The agency has prioritized home confinement. Now they're attempting to do it through federal location monitoring, which is done by the United States Probation Office. Well, do they have the bandwidth to all of a sudden expand, the job descriptions for their probation officers already working? Pardon and punishment. Pardons for the right people. President Trump last Thursday pardoned 5 former football players, including Super Bowl champions. That's great. That action exempts NFL players from prior criminal contact and highlights how Trump's clemency favors those with fame, fortune, or political ties. What we have here is then the next is punishment for the wrong people. After the Biden administration commuted 37 death sentences without parole, President Trump immediately ordered that these men be confined under the harshest conditions, calling for the treatments consistent with the monstrosity of their crimes. And the administration then attempted to have them transferred to the Supermax at ADX Florence, which is not meant for them in the first place. This was stopped, though, by a federal district judge, Timothy Kelly, who blocked the ruling. We're now going to save the best, at least illegal, for last. And this has to do with Steve Bannon and the Department of Justice basically dismissed the case that was related to his refusal to testify before congressional subcommittees investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. So the Department of Justice is really no longer the Department of Justice. Really, it's an extension of the Trump administrations. They become their law firm to defend President Trump from actions and to carry out all of his desires against those that he did not like, or in this particular case, pardon people that would supported him during that time period. The growing threat of contraband in the Bureau of Prisons. This is probably one of the greatest threats facing federal institutions today. And so it's drugs, weapons, cell phones. I don't know about the cell phones, drugs, and weapons, yes, but here we have the new director of the Bureau of Prisons who put out a video and explained everything, which, is a good video to see. We're not going to take time and look at it right now. I don't know how they're going to go ahead and ensure that, because a lot of these things are coming into the prisons either through BOP correction staff or now through drones. Now we're going to go back to the Government Accountability Office. This was crazy, as I say. They learned that the Bureau of Prisons doesn't know how many people are eligible to be transferred to a halfway house or who should have already been transferred. They don't have the halfway house capacity to accommodate all the people that may be eligible to transfer. Well, there may be a subheading to this because they also paid their bills to contractors and halfway houses late about 70% of the time. How can you run a business depending on the Federal Bureau of Prisons, who's supposed to fill beds that you have contracted to them? If you're not getting paid, then you can't pay your bills. So I don't know that I can blame them. The full report is here. I'll open this up for you so that you can see it. This is the full actual report on actions needed to better achieve financial and other benefits of moving individuals to halfway houses on time. Late payments also came with massive interest. So that, for example, interest and penalties that the Bureau had to pay to contractors, including halfway houses, $12.5 million. That's crazy, being that everyone's complaining that money is so tight. And the interest and penalties paid to the Bureau of Prisons just to their residential reentry, that the Bureau of Prisons had to pay to the residential reentry centers is 5.6 million. So these could all be brought to zero, which would move people into the halfway houses early for those that need it, and home confinement to those that don't. And this is the article. You can go ahead and print it right up online. I got this right off the front page. Federal legal news. This is a weekly article, and I'm providing a partial overview. They covered several topics. Sentencing Commission was going to hear final comments, and so Federal Legal News had predictions. Amphetamine purity, they had downward revisions on the drug tables. Increased penalties for fentanyl offenders. The Department of Justice was objecting to the loss table because they wanted to keep more people in prison. So they estimated 37% reduction in lengths of sentences. Well, this is the purpose, is to get people in and out of prison quicker. And also some of the severities are like way off the chart. Some of the penalties or sentences are off the charts, ideally for white collar offenders currently incarcerated. For example, long sentences for multi-million dollar frauds were hard to justify, given that recently billion-dollar fraud schemes have gone unpunished due to the people that the Trump administration has pardoned. Doge has obtained Medicare and Medicaid claims data suggesting potential fraud. Department of HHS aims to recover these funds by offering citizen bonuses up to 30% of the collected amounts. Well, that means essentially for them being whistleblowers. Doge technology could also analyze procurement data from the Bureau of Prisons. And mind you, they don't need to use Doge. They could use the Department of Justice analytics to detect fraud and waste, reveal inefficiencies in medical programs that deny care, and track unnecessary expenses for elderly and chronically ill prisoners who do not pose a threat to society. Essentially, there are a large number of prisons where there's not even psychologists there, or they're reduced by 50%. And that affects both the mental health of the people who are in prison, plus programs that some of these individuals would run, because medical staff and teachers are being used or augmented into the system as correction staff. Supreme Court was going to hear oral arguments on non-citizen removal. Federal courts are handling habeas cases from non-citizen offenders regarding early release to home confinement based on sentencing credits under the First Step Act. Despite efforts to reduce the prison population, nonviolent offenders, including those with permanent residency and U.S. citizen spouses, have not benefited or have been transferred either to immigration detention or to a halfway house. The Second Circuit stated that there must be clear and convincing evidence of an individual's removability and that the government must provide a violation of green card terms. A negative ruling could put all the accused green card holders at risk of deportation. That's just nuts. With the expansion of the First Step Back credits, is RDAP worth it? The Federal Bureau of Prisons still denies up to 1 year off RDAP for nonviolent offenders with firearm convictions, despite Congress's intent. An exclusion only that the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit has rejected. The majority of drug offenders struggle with substance addiction. And here, the MAT program has consistently failed to meet their expectations. Many of these classes meet only once, allow attendees to assign attendance roster to satisfy the requirement, and quite frankly, the MAT program for those that are drug offenders that have substance addictions, for a lot of them, it only kicks in months before they're about to be released from prison in the first place. Halfway houses shortages should not be an excuse for keeping prisoners in prison longer. The Bureau of Prisons has more poorly managed releases, often neglecting U.S. probation supervision and home confinement options. While some halfway houses offer support, many are unsafe and experience drug use issues. Prisoners who have completed their sentences should be released, as judges have often rejected the claim of full halfway houses grounds for delaying releases. And there are those that are in prison that can go home, skipping halfway house if they meet the eligibility requirements, which I've covered in previous YouTubes. I thank you very much for taking the time to listen. I publish a new updated version of this federal courts BOP news you can use. I try and update this weekly. An early release to home confinement. Are you going to be eligible? And the devil here starts in preparation for the pre-sentence interview. I appreciate everyone taking the time to listen. I hope you all have a good and safe day. And as usual, my wish for you is everyone stay safe.